Hey there, pet lovers! Welcome to Petropolis TV, your go-to spot for the most adorable and funny dog and cat videos on the internet. Get ready to laugh out loud and say "ah" as we showcase our furry friends' silliest and sweetest moments. Whether you're a dog person, a cat person, or just an animal enthusiast, we've got something special for you. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell to join our pet-loving community. And now, let's dive into the fun! When you're trying to be a ballerina, but the wall says no. Stretching like a yoga master, napping like a pro. Mama Cat's delivery service needs some practice. Huh? Who needs a handshake when you have paw swipes? Huh? When your dreams of tasting a lollipop are crushed. Flexible and sleepy, the perfect cat combo. Secret clubhouse, no humans allowed. When your dreams are interrupted by a surprise poke. Dog or spinning top, you decide. Just a dog and his love for water. Double the trouble, double the tumble. Huh. When the ninja cat spies on the oblivious husky. This cat prefers his snacks to go. Huh? When you sprint into the tub like it's a finish line. Joining the bath party in the most awkward way possible. Huh? Trying to catch the uncatchable. When you're curious but also want to stay hidden. Who needs eyes when you have chips? Your petting privileges have been revoked. Head pats, officially approved. Happiness is a dog running free with its human. Canine massage therapy in action. best gardening assistant ever. When a drone becomes the ultimate cat villain. A hot dog with a real twist. Huh? Who knew belly raspberries could be so fun? Sneaky snack thief on the prowl. Hill Descent Mastered Backslide Edition. Sheets versus paws and tiny hands. The battle begins. Redefining dinner time. Bowls out, floors in. Trying to catch that perfect sip from the tricky fountain. Real or not, that tiger statue is terrifying. When the cat turns down the snack, the dog seizes the moment. Pondered long and hard, but the banana prevailed. Sliding down together, making memories in the snow. Backpack Kitty is not a hit with his friend. Rocking the fruit hat like a runway model. Sneezing Spree, Cat Edition. Glamour requires focus and determination. When your dog takes over as your personal stylist. Wet and Wild Fountain Edition. Face Off, neither budging an inch. Cuteness overload, but strictly no cuddles. Tumbling together, pet playtime perfection. Discovering hidden treasures in the snowball. Paws and Wheels, the ultimate playdate. Nature's landscaper hard at work. Who needs a chew toy when you have a paw? Huh? Freedom! When the adventure tires you out mid-ride. Husky's quest for the ultimate backyard hole. Defending the house from the noisy invader. Just a bear out for a Sunday drive. Master of food detection at work.
Huh?
Defying the water spray with pure stubbornness. Someone's feeling extra playful today. Man's best friend, even during yard work.
Help me!
Firefighters get a warm welcome from a wagging tail. Snack time is the best time with popcorn. Adorable kitty chorus asking for love. Indoor racetrack, this dog's favorite course. High-speed chase along the river. Refreshing from the porcelain bowl. Best part of the day, sofa snuggles with my pup. Cat ASMR Hiss Edition. Master of Tangles strikes again. Looks like a hurricane named Puppy just blew through. Why nap anywhere else when the sink fits just right? Spooked by the resident feline. King of the fence with a panoramic view. The happiest little hops for dinner delight. When the house turns into a feline racetrack. Focused and poised. Ball game countdown. Canine curiosity meets feline displeasure. Plotting the perfect glassy disaster. Big dog, tiny kitten, huge fear. Turning the cushion into a hamster hideaway.
Oh no!
Eyes on the prize. Human's pasta. Spin cycle activated. Pure joy on the grass. Who needs TV when the chase is this fun? Determined pup versus the slippery table. Who will win? Finally, some alone time in my favorite spot. Who needs a water bowl when you have the owner's glass? Where's the food? This plate is playing tricks on us. The case of the rebellious doghouse door. When the tool shed becomes a wildlife clubhouse. Brushed to perfection and loving every moment. Cardboard chomping, cat's way to freshen up those fangs. Puppy power, draining the pool one bite at a time. Parrot's water bowl, now a cat's favorite drink. When your snack choice is a mini melon. Climbing walls with feline finesse, superhero style. When cats hit the treadmill, it's a workout revolution. When mealtime becomes a savoring ritual. Trying to stay still while the buzzers make you shiver. Playful pup meets a new chew toy, the blonde's tail. Mouse on the head, new trendsetter in town. From this part of the video onward, I will share stories about my two cats. These adventures took place in the past few years. It was a sunny afternoon, the kind of day when the garden looked like a paradise for cats. Ludi, the older and wiser of the two, lay lazily on the garden bench, basking in the warmth. Floki, the younger and more adventurous, was prowling around, his eyes darting from one fluttering leaf to another. Little did they know this afternoon would turn into an escapade that neither of them would forget. Ludi had always been the cautious one. He would sit and watch Floki's antics with a mix of amusement and disdain. But today, there was something different in the air. Floki had discovered a small hole at the bottom of the garden fence. It was just big enough for a curious cat to squeeze through, and Floki's curiosity was boundless. With a mischievous glint in his eyes, Floki approached Ludi. "Ludi, you have to see this," he meowed, his tail twitching with excitement. Ludi opened one eye and yawned. "What is it now, Floki? Another butterfly to chase?" "No, it's better. I found a way to the other side of the fence. Think of all the adventures waiting for us." Floki's enthusiasm was infectious. Despite his better judgment, Ludi's curiosity got the better of him. He stretched, gave his fur a quick lick, and followed Floki to the fence. The hole was indeed small, but Floki had already wriggled halfway through. Ludi hesitated for a moment, but then squeezed through, albeit with less grace than his younger companion. On the other side of the fence, the world looked entirely different. The garden next door was a wild, untamed place compared to their neatly kept lawn. Bushes grew in tangled masses, and the scent of unknown creatures filled the air. Floki darted forward, his nose leading the way. "Come on, Ludi, who knows what we'll find?" Ludi, despite himself, felt a thrill of excitement. He followed Floki through the undergrowth, occasionally pausing to sniff the air or investigate an interesting scent. They were a pair of explorers in an unknown land. Their first discovery was a small pond. Floki, always eager to investigate, leaned over the edge and peered into the water. He was mesmerized by his own reflection and the tiny fish darting below the surface. Ludi, more cautious, kept a watchful eye on the surroundings. Suddenly, there was a splash. Floki had leaned too far and tumbled into the pond. He emerged a moment later, wet and bedraggled, but with a triumphant look on his face. "Did you see that, Ludi? I almost caught one of the fish." Ludi couldn't help but laugh. "You caught something all right, a bath." Their next adventure took them to a large tree. Floki, still damp but undeterred, scrambled up the trunk with surprising agility. Ludi, not wanting to be outdone, followed, though with less enthusiasm. From their perch, they could see the whole neighborhood. It was a view they'd never seen before, and it was breathtaking. Floki spotted a bird's nest on a nearby branch. "Look, Ludi, baby birds," he whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. "Careful, Floki," Ludi cautioned. "We don't want to scare them." But Floki, ever the daredevil, inched closer. The mother bird, sensing danger, swooped down with a flurry of wings, squawking furiously. Floki, startled, lost his balance and tumbled from the branch. He managed to land on a lower branch, but his dignity was clearly bruised. Ludi chuckled. "You really need to work on your landings." Their final adventure of the day involved a mysterious rustling sound coming from a pile of leaves. Floki, always curious, pounced on the pile, only to be met with a startled hedgehog. The hedgehog curled into a ball, and Floki leaped back with a yowl of surprise. Ludi, always the voice of reason, approached more cautiously and sniffed the hedgehog, deciding it was harmless. As the sun began to set, the two adventurers made their way back to the fence. Squeezing through the hole, they returned to the familiar comfort of their garden. They were exhausted, but exhilarated from their day of adventure. Ludi lay down on the bench, his fur slightly ruffled from the day's events. Floki, still damp and slightly prickly from his encounter with the hedgehog, curled up next to him. "You know, Ludi," Floki said with a contented sigh, "today was the best day ever." Ludi purred in agreement. "It was indeed, Floki, it was indeed." It was an ordinary Thursday afternoon, and the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the garden. Ludi and Floki were in their usual spots, Ludi on the patio chair, watching the world with his usual calm demeanor, and Floki darting around the garden, chasing after anything that moved. As the evening progressed, a strange sound echoed from the fence that separated their garden from the neighbors. Floki, ever curious, paused in his chase and pricked his ears. The sound was unlike anything he had heard before, a sort of rustling mixed with with soft thumping. He turned to Ludi, who was already looking towards the fence, his whiskers twitching with curiosity. "What do you think it is, Ludi?" Floki whispered, his eyes wide with anticipation. Ludi tilted his head, listening carefully. "I'm not sure, Floki, but it sounds like we have a visitor." With that, Floki bounded over to the fence, peeking through the small gaps between the wooden slats. To his surprise, he saw a pair of bright eyes staring back at him. The eyes belonged to a small, scruffy-looking raccoon who seemed equally surprised to see Floki. "Hey there," Floki greeted, his tail twitching with excitement. "Who are you?" The raccoon blinked a few times, seemingly considering whether to answer. "I'm Rocky. I've been exploring this area for a while, and I couldn't help but notice your garden. It looks very inviting." Floki's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Do you want to come in? I'm sure Ludi wouldn't mind. Right, Ludi?" Ludi, who had sauntered over, gave a nonchalant shrug. "As long as he doesn't cause any trouble, I suppose it's fine." Rocky, encouraged by the invitation, squeezed through a small gap in the fence and tumbled into the garden. He stood up, brushed himself off, and looked around with wide eyes. "Wow, this place is amazing! So many places to explore!" Floki beamed with pride. "We love it here. Come on, I'll show you around." The two new friends started to explore the garden, with Ludi trailing behind, keeping a watchful eye on them. Floki showed Rocky all his favorite spots: the bird bath, the old oak tree with its low-hanging branches perfect for climbing, and the flower beds where butterflies often flitted about. Rocky was particularly fascinated by the garden shed. "What's in there?" he asked, sniffing the air. Floki grinned. "That's where the humans keep all their tools and interesting stuff. We're not really allowed in, but sometimes if we're lucky, the door gets left open." As if on cue, the door to the shed, which had been left slightly ajar, creaked open a bit more. Rocky's eyes widened with excitement. "Let's go see." Before Ludi could protest, Floki and Rocky dashed into the shed. Inside, the shed was a treasure trove of fascinating smells and intriguing objects. There were bags of soil, pots of all sizes, gardening tools, and various other bits and bobs that humans seemed to find useful. Rocky was immediately drawn to a stack of old flower pots. "Look at these! They're perfect for hiding in." He began to clamber up the stack, causing them to wobble precariously. Floki, ever the daring one, decided to join in. He jumped onto a nearby shelf, sending a few small tools clattering to the floor. The noise startled both cats, and they paused, looking at each other with wide eyes before bursting into a fit of giggles. Ludi, who had been watching from the doorway, sighed. "You two are going to get into trouble," he muttered, but there was a hint of a smile on his face. Just as things were getting interesting, there was a loud bang as one of the flower pots toppled over, sending a cascade of soil across the shed floor. Rocky, covered in dirt, looked at Floki with a sheepish grin. "Maybe we should get out of here before we cause any more damage." Floki nodded in agreement, and the two of them scampered out of the shed, with Ludi following close behind. They returned to the garden, their fur slightly dusty but their spirits high. The trio spent the rest of the evening playing and exploring. Rocky proved to be an excellent climber, even managing to scale the tall oak tree, much to Floki's admiration. Ludi, meanwhile, found a comfortable spot on the grass and watched the antics of his younger companions with a bemused expression. As night fell, the garden was bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight. Rocky, who was starting to feel tired, stretched and yawned. "I should probably head back home. It's been a great adventure, though. Thanks for showing me around." Floki looked disappointed but nodded. "You can come back anytime, Rocky. We'll always have more adventures waiting." Ludi, ever the diplomat, added, "Just make sure you don't cause too much trouble next time." Rocky laughed. "I'll do my best. See you around, friends." With that, he squeezed back through the gap in the fence and disappeared into the night. Floki and Ludi watched him go, feeling a sense of satisfaction. They had made a new friend and had a day filled with fun and excitement. As they settled down for the night, Floki turned to Ludi. "You know, Ludi, today was one of the best days ever." Ludi purred in agreement. "It certainly was, Floki, and who knows what tomorrow will bring." With that, the two cats curled up together, their fur warm and soft against the cool night air. They drifted off to sleep, dreaming of future adventures and the promise of more fun times with their new friend, Rocky. It was a crisp autumn morning, and the garden was covered in a blanket of colorful leaves. Ludi and Floki were up early, eager to explore the wonders of the new season. Ludi, with his usual calm demeanor, watched from the patio as Floki darted around, pouncing on fallen leaves and chasing after imaginary prey. Floki's attention was soon captured by a particularly large pile of leaves at the far end of the garden. He bounded over, his curiosity piqued. As he approached, he noticed something unusual sticking out of the pile, a bright, colorful feather. His eyes widened with excitement. Feathers were always a delightful find. "Ludi, come and see this," Floki called out, his voice filled with excitement. Ludi, who had been enjoying a sunbeam on the patio, stretched lazily and strolled over to where Floki was eagerly pawing at the pile of leaves. He glanced at the feather, then at Floki's expectant face. "It's just a feather, Floki," Ludi said with a hint of amusement, "but I suppose it is quite pretty." Floki, undeterred by Ludi's lack of enthusiasm, continued to investigate. As he dug deeper into the pile of leaves, he uncovered not one, but several more feathers, each more vibrant than the last. They were reds, blues, and greens, shimmering in the morning light. "This is amazing!" Floki exclaimed. "Where do you think they came from?" Ludi pondered for a moment. "Perhaps a bird lost them while passing through, or maybe it's part of a nest." Floki's eyes sparkled with a sudden idea. "Let's collect them all. We can make our own little treasure pile." Ludi, always up for a bit of fun, agreed. Together they began to gather the feathers, carefully adding each one to a growing pile. As they worked, they discovered more and more feathers scattered around the garden. It was as if a feathered parade had passed through, leaving a trail of colorful plumes in its wake. The morning passed quickly, and soon they had amassed an impressive collection of feathers. Floki was particularly proud of a long, iridescent blue feather that shimmered in the light. He held it up for Ludi to admire. "This one is the best," Floki declared. "It's like a piece of the sky." Ludi nodded appreciatively. "It is quite beautiful. We've done a good job, Floki." Just then, they heard a rustling sound coming from the old oak tree at the center of the garden. They turned to see a large, majestic bird perched on one of the lower branches. Its plumage was a dazzling array of colors, and it looked down at them with an air of curiosity. Floki's mouth fell open. "Ludi, do you see that? It's a peacock!" Ludi blinked in surprise. What on earth is a peacock doing here? The peacock, as if understanding their bewilderment, fluttered down to the ground and approached them. It seemed entirely unafraid, its long tail feathers trailing behind it like a royal robe. "Hello there," the peacock said in a surprisingly gentle voice. "I see you found my feathers." Floki, always the more outgoing of the two, stepped forward. "Yes, we did. They're beautiful. We've been collecting them all morning." The peacock tilted its head, a hint of amusement in its eyes. "I've been molting, and it seems my feathers have spread quite far. I'm glad you find them lovely." Ludi, ever the diplomat, added, "We didn't mean to take them without permission. We were just so fascinated by their beauty." The peacock chuckled softly. "No harm done, my friends. In fact, I have more feathers that I no longer need. If you'd like, I can give them to you." Floki's eyes lit up. "Really? That would be amazing." The peacock nodded. "Follow me then." It led them to the base of the oak tree where a small pile of freshly molted feathers lay. There were even more colors and patterns, each feather a unique piece of art. Floki and Ludi carefully gathered the new feathers, their collection growing even more impressive. The peacock watched them with a gentle smile. "I'm glad my feathers can bring you joy. Just remember to take care of them." "We will," Floki promised, his tail flicking with excitement. "Thank you so much." As the peacock took its leave, Ludi and Floki carried their newfound treasures back to their favorite spot under the patio. They arranged the feathers carefully, creating a vibrant display that caught the light and shimmered with every breeze. "That was incredible," Floki said, still buzzing with excitement. "I never thought we'd meet a real peacock." Ludi smiled. "It was quite a surprise, but I'm glad we could help him and add to our collection." The day continued with more adventures, but none as thrilling as their encounter with the peacock. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Floki and Ludi curled up together, admiring their feather collection. "You know, Ludi," Floki said softly, "today was one of the best days ever." Ludi purred in agreement. "It certainly was, Floki, and who knows what tomorrow will bring." With that, the two cats drifted off to sleep, dreaming of future adventures and the promise of more surprises in their beloved garden. The Great Feather Heist had been a success, and they couldn't wait to see what other treasures awaited them in the days to come. It was a lazy Saturday afternoon, and Ludi and Flocky were lounging in their favorite sunspot by the garden shed. The warm rays made their fur gleam, and the gentle breeze rustled the leaves in a soothing melody. Ludi, ever the calm and composed one, lay with his eyes half closed, while Flocky twitched his tail, unable to resist the call of adventure. Floki's restless nature soon got the better of him. He jumped up, sniffing the air. "Ludi, don't you ever wonder what's beyond the garden?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. Ludi opened one eye and sighed. "Flocky, we've been through this garden 100 times. There's nothing new to see." "But what if there is?" Flocky insisted. "What if there's something we've missed?" Ludi knew better than to argue with Floki when he was in one of his adventurous moods. "Fine," he said, stretching lazily. "Where do you want to explore today?" Floki's eyes darted around the garden, landing on a spot near the fence where the grass grew particularly thick and tall. "Over there," he said, bounding towards it. Ludi followed at a more leisurely pace, his curiosity piqued despite himself. As they approached the dense patch of grass, Floki began to paw at the ground. "Help me dig, Ludi. There's something here, I can feel it." Ludi rolled his eyes but joined in. Together they dug through the grass and dirt until they uncovered a small wooden trapdoor almost hidden from view. Floki's heart raced with excitement. "Look at this. I bet it leads to something amazing." Ludi inspected the trapdoor with interest. "It looks old. I wonder where it goes." Floki didn't need any more encouragement. He nudged the trapdoor open with his nose, revealing a dark tunnel leading down into the earth. "Come on, Ludi. Let's see where it leads." Ludi hesitated. "It could be dangerous, Floki. We don't know what's down there." Floki's tail twitched impatiently. "That's what makes it exciting. Besides, we're together. We'll be fine." With a reluctant sigh, Ludi followed Floki into the tunnel. The passage was narrow and damp, with roots hanging from the ceiling and walls. Their eyes quickly adjusted to the dim light, and they moved cautiously forward. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning beneath the garden. Just as Ludi was about to suggest turning back, they emerged into a hidden chamber. The room was lit by a small flickering lantern, and in the center was an old wooden chest. Floki's eyes widened with excitement. "Ludi, look! A treasure chest!" Ludi approached the chest cautiously. "It's probably just full of old junk," but Floki was already prying the lid open. Inside, they found an assortment of strange and wonderful items, old coins, bits of jewelry, and a few ancient-looking scrolls. Floki picked up a shiny pendant with his paw. "This is incredible. Who do you think this belonged to?" Ludi examined one of the scrolls. "It looks like someone used this place to hide their valuables. Maybe it's been here for centuries." Floki's mind raced with possibilities. "We're like treasure hunters. This is the best adventure ever." As they continued to explore the chamber, they heard a faint sound from the tunnel behind them. It was a low, rumbling noise, growing louder by the second. Ludi's ears perked up. "Floki, we need to go, now." Floki reluctantly put the pendant back in the chest. "But we just got here." Ludi nudged him towards the tunnel. "Whatever's making that noise is getting closer. We don't want to be trapped down here." The two cats raced back through the tunnel, their paws skimming over the dirt floor. The rumbling grew louder, and the ground began to shake. Just as they reached the trapdoor, a section of the tunnel behind them collapsed with a deafening crash. They burst out into the sunlight, panting and covered in dirt. The trapdoor slammed shut behind them, and the garden was silent once more. Floki looked back at the hidden entrance, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. "That was close," he said, his heart still racing. Ludi nodded, catching his breath. "Too close. We shouldn't go back down there. It's not safe." Floki sighed, a bit disappointed. "But it was amazing, Ludi. We found real treasure." Ludi couldn't help but smile. "It was quite the adventure, I'll give you that. But next time, let's stick to exploring above ground, okay?" Floki nodded reluctantly. "Okay, but I'm glad we did it. It's a story we'll remember forever." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Ludi and Floki settled down in their favorite spot. Floki's fur was still a bit dusty, but his eyes shone with the thrill of their adventure. "You know, Ludi," Floki said softly, "today was one of the best days ever." Ludi purred in agreement. "It certainly was, Floki. It certainly was." With that, the two cats drifted off to sleep, dreaming of hidden tunnels, buried treasure, and the promise of more adventures to come. The hidden tunnel had been an unexpected discovery, but it had given them a story they would cherish forever. It was a rainy afternoon, and the sound of raindrops tapping against the windows filled the house with a soothing rhythm. Ludi and Floki, confined indoors, were lounging in the living room. Ludi was curled up on the windowsill, watching the rain, while Floki lay on his back, batting at a dangling string from the curtains. "I'm bored," Floki announced, his paws falling to his sides. "There's nothing to do." Ludi stretched and yawned. "Why don't you take a nap? That's what rainy days are for." Floki rolled onto his stomach, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "Or we could find something fun to do, like an adventure." Ludi sighed. "What kind of adventure can we have inside the house?" Floki's ears perked up as he glanced towards the kitchen. "We've never really explored the kitchen properly, have we? There are all those cupboards and drawers. Who knows what we might find?" Ludi raised an eyebrow. "The kitchen is off limits, Floki. You know the humans don't like us poking around in there." Floki grinned. "That's what makes it an adventure. Come on, Ludi, where's your sense of fun?" Reluctantly, Ludi hopped down from the windowsill and followed Floki into the kitchen. The room was quiet, with the hum of the refrigerator and the gentle patter of rain against the window the only sounds. Floki headed straight for the lower cupboards, his tail twitching with excitement. "Let's start here," he said, nudging a cupboard door open with his nose. Inside were pots and pans, neatly stacked. Floki pawed at a small saucepan, making it wobble. "Be careful," Ludi warned, peering inside. "We don't want to make a mess." Floki ignored him and moved to the next cupboard, which was filled with canned goods. He batted at a can of tuna, sending it rolling across the floor. "Look, Ludi, dinner!" Ludi shook his head, amused despite himself. "We can't open it, Floki. Besides, that's not for us." Floki pouted, but continued his exploration. He moved to the drawers, pulling one open to reveal an assortment of utensils. He pawed at a whisk, fascinated by its springy, bouncy nature. Ludi, meanwhile, had his eye on the pantry. He pushed the door open and peered inside. Shelves lined with boxes, bags, and jars greeted him. One shelf in particular caught his attention. It was filled with treats and snacks. "Floki, come here," Ludi called. "I think I found something interesting." Floki bounded over, his eyes widening at the sight of the treats. "Wow, we hit the jackpot!" They began to investigate the various items on the shelf. Floki pawed at a bag of catnip, his excitement growing. "Ludi, look, catnip! We have to get this open." Ludi hesitated. "I don't know, Floki. If we get caught, we'll be in big trouble." Floki's eyes twinkled with determination. "Just a little bit, they'll never know." With that, he began to nibble at the edge of the bag, trying to tear it open. Ludi watched, half amused, half worried. After a few moments of struggle, Floki managed to create a small tear in the bag. The sweet, pungent aroma of catnip filled the air. Floki's eyes glazed over with delight. "Oh, this is heavenly!" He rolled onto his back, rubbing his face in the spilled catnip. Ludi couldn't help but join in. The two of them rolled and frolicked in the catnip, their worries forgotten in a haze of bliss. They batted at the loose leaves, sending them flying into the air, and chased each other around the kitchen. Their fun was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. Ludi's ears perked up and he nudged Floki. "We need to clean this up, the humans are coming." Floki, still dazed from the catnip, struggled to his feet. "Too late," he mumbled just as the kitchen door swung open. Their human stood in the doorway, hands on hips, surveying the scene. The kitchen was a mess, cans scattered on the floor, drawers open and catnip everywhere. Ludi and Floki sat in the middle of it all, looking guilty but content. "What on earth have you two been up to?" their human asked, trying to suppress a laugh. Ludi and Floki exchanged a glance, knowing they were caught, but their human, unable to stay mad at them for long, just shook their head and grabbed a broom. "Let's get this cleaned up." As they swept up the catnip and put the kitchen back in order, Ludi and Floki helped as best they could, pawing at stray leaves and nudging cans back into place. Once the kitchen was tidy again, their human gave each of them a scratch behind the ears. "You two are a handful," their human said with a smile, "but I wouldn't have it any other way." Floki purred, his eyes half closed with contentment. "That was fun, Ludi. We should do it again sometime." Ludi shook his head, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Maybe not too soon, Floki, but it was a memorable adventure." As the rain continued to fall outside, Ludi and Floki curled up together in their favorite sunspot, now dry and warm inside. They drifted off to sleep, dreaming of future capers and the promise of more adventures to come. The kitchen caper had been a daring success, and they couldn't wait to see what other mischief they could get into next. The house was quiet, the only sounds the soft ticking of the clock and the occasional creak of settling wood. The moon cast a silvery glow through the windows, creating eerie patterns on the floor. Ludi and Floki were curled up on the sofa, half asleep, when a sudden noise made their ears twitch. "Did you hear that?" Floki whispered, his eyes snapping open. Ludi yawned and stretched. "It's probably just the house settling." Floki shook his head. No, it sounded different, like a ghost. Ludi sighed, but curiosity got the better of him. "All right, let's go check it out, but I'm sure it's nothing." They hopped off the sofa and padded silently towards the source of the noise. As they moved through the darkened house, shadows danced on the walls, making Floki's imagination run wild. "I've heard stories about haunted houses," Floki said in a hushed tone. "Maybe we have a ghost living with us." Ludi rolled his eyes. "Ghosts aren't real, Floki. It's probably just a draft or a loose shutter." But Floki was determined. They followed the sound to the kitchen, where they found the pantry door slightly ajar, creaking softly as it moved. "See? Just a draft," Ludi said, nudging the door closed with his paw. Floki wasn't convinced. "What if the ghost is hiding in there? We should check inside." Ludi sighed again, but pushed the pantry door open. Inside, everything looked normal. Shelves were neatly stocked with food, and there was no sign of anything amiss. "Nothing here," Ludi said, turning to leave, but Floki, ever curious, began to sniff around the pantry. Suddenly, he froze, his tail puffing up. "Ludi, look!" Ludi turned back to see a faint, glowing figure standing in the corner of the pantry. His fur stood on end, and he took a step back. What is that?" The figure moved, drifting towards them. Floki and Ludi backed away, their eyes wide with fear. But as the figure moved into the moonlight streaming through the window, they saw it more clearly. It's a balloon," Floki exclaimed, his fear turning to relief. Indeed, the ghost was nothing more than a helium balloon, partially deflated and caught on a loose shelf. The string had become tangled, causing it to drift eerily when the pantry door moved. Ludi let out a laugh, the tension draining from his body. "See, Floki, no ghost, just a balloon." Floki's ears flattened with embarrassment. "I knew that all along, I was just testing you." Ludi shook his head, still chuckling. "Sure you were." They turned to leave the pantry when they heard another strange noise, this time coming from the attic. Both cats froze, their ears perked up. "Okay, that wasn't the balloon," Floki said, his curiosity reignited. "Let's check it out." Ludi hesitated, but followed Floki up the stairs to the attic door. The noise grew louder as they approached, a soft, shuffling sound, like something moving around. Floki pushed the attic door open and they climbed the steep stairs. The attic was dark, filled with old furniture and forgotten boxes. Moonlight filtered through a small window, casting long shadows across the room. "Maybe it's just a rat," Ludi whispered, trying to convince himself as much as Floki, but Floki was already on the move, sniffing around the old trunks and boxes. As they reached the far corner of the attic, the shuffling noise grew louder. Floki batted at a stack of boxes and they tumbled over, revealing a small, dusty mirror propped against the wall. Ludi stared at their reflections in the mirror, distorted by the dust and grime. The shuffling noise stopped. "I think we found our ghost," he said, pointing to their own reflections. Floki peered at the mirror, realization dawning on him. "So it was us all along making the noise?" Ludi nodded. "Probably our movements causing things to shift, and the mirror just made it look spooky." Floki laughed, relieved and a little embarrassed. "Well, that was quite an adventure. I guess our house isn't haunted after all." Ludi smiled, giving Floki a reassuring nudge. "No ghosts, just our imaginations." They made their way back downstairs, feeling a mix of relief and amusement. As they settled back onto the sofa, the house seemed much less eerie than before. The ticking clock and creaking wood were just familiar, comforting sounds once again. "You know, Ludi," Floki said, curling up next to his brother. "Even though there wasn't a real ghost, this was still a great adventure." Ludi purred in agreement. It was, but next time, let's try to have an adventure that doesn't involve scaring ourselves half to death. Floki chuckled. Deal. As the rain continued to patter against the windows, Ludi and Floki drifted off to sleep, dreaming of their next big adventure. The mystery of the midnight ghost hunt had been solved, and they felt closer than ever, ready to face whatever came their way together. It was a bright spring morning, and Ludi and Floki were out in the garden, basking in the warmth of the sun. The garden was a vibrant canvas of colors, with flowers in full bloom and birds singing merrily. Floki was chasing a butterfly, his energy boundless, while Ludi observed from his favorite spot under the old oak tree. Floki paused, panting lightly, and looked around. Ludi, have you ever noticed those garden gnomes over by the fence? Ludi raised an eyebrow. Garden gnomes? What about them? Floki tilted his head. They look like they've moved. I'm sure they weren't in that position yesterday. Ludi yawned. Gnomes don't move, Floki. They're just decorations. Floki, undeterred, trotted over to the gnomes. But what if they do? What if they come to life when we're not looking? Ludi rolled his eyes but got up to join Floki. The gnomes were indeed in different positions, arranged as if they were in the middle of some activity. One gnome was holding a watering can, another had a fishing rod, and the third seemed to be mid-stride, as if walking towards the flower bed. See? Floki said excitedly. They've definitely moved. Ludi examined the gnomes. Maybe the wind knocked them over, and someone put them back in different spots. Floki shook his head. No way. They've been moving every day this week. I'm sure of it. Ludi sighed, his curiosity now piqued. Alright, let's keep an eye on them and see what happens. The two cats spent the day lounging in the garden, occasionally glancing at the gnomes. As evening approached and the sun began to set, the gnomes remained in the same positions. Floki was getting impatient. Maybe they only move at night, Floki suggested. Ludi nodded. Could be. Let's check on them again in the morning. That night, as the house fell silent and the moon cast a silver glow over the garden, Ludi and Floki settled by the window, keeping watch. The garden was peaceful, with only the rustling of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl breaking the silence. Floki's eyes grew heavy, and he started to doze off. Ludi nudged him gently. Stay awake, Floki, we need to see if they move. But as the hours passed, the gnomes remained still. Eventually, even Ludi's eyelids grew heavy, and both cats drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Floki woke with a start. Ludi, the gnomes! Ludi blinked awake and looked out the window. Sure enough, the gnomes were in different positions. The one with the watering can was now by the flower bed. The fishing gnome was near the pond, and the walking gnome was closer to the patio. They moved! Floki exclaimed. I knew it. Ludi frowned. How is that possible? We were watching all night. Determined to solve the mystery, Ludi and Floki decided to investigate further. They inspected the gnomes closely, looking for any signs of tampering. As they circled the gnomes, Ludi noticed something unusual, a small, muddy footprint next to one of them. Look at this, Floki, Ludi said, pointing to the footprint. It's too small to be from a human. Floki's eyes widened. Do you think it's from an animal? Ludi nodded. Maybe, but what kind of animal moves garden gnomes? That evening, they decided to stay hidden in the garden, hoping to catch the mysterious mover in action. They found a good hiding spot behind a bush with a clear view of the gnomes. As the night deepened, they heard a soft rustling sound. Peeking through the leaves, they saw a small furry figure creeping towards the gnomes. It was a raccoon. The raccoon sniffed around the gnomes, then began to nudge them with its paws, rearranging them into new positions. Floki gasped. It's a raccoon! He's the one moving the gnomes! Ludi whispered. It makes sense. Raccoons are curious and like to play with things. They watched as the raccoon continued to move the gnomes, seemingly arranging them into a scene of its own making. Once satisfied, the raccoon scampered off into the night. The next morning, Ludi and Floki couldn't wait to share their discovery with their humans. As their humans enjoyed breakfast on the patio, the two cats meowed excitedly, leading them to the gnomes. Look at this, one of the humans said, noticing the new arrangement of the gnomes. It's like they've been set up for a little garden play. Ludi and Floki purred proudly, knowing they had solved the mystery. Their humans laughed and patted their heads. "You two have such vivid imaginations," one of them said. "Maybe the garden gnomes really do come to life at night." Floki and Ludi exchanged a knowing glance, their secret safe. They had uncovered the truth, and it had been a delightful adventure. As the days passed, they kept an eye on the gnomes, always eager to see what new positions the raccoon would arrange them in. "See, Ludi?" Floki said one afternoon, watching the gnomes from their spot under the oak tree. "I told you there was something magical about them." Ludi smiled. "You were right, Floki. Sometimes the most unexpected mysteries are the best kind." With that, the two cats settled down, content in their garden paradise, knowing that every night held the promise of a new adventure with their mysterious furry friend. It was a typical summer afternoon, and the garden was alive with the sounds of chirping birds and buzzing insects. Ludi and Floki were lounging on the patio, enjoying the warm sunshine. Floki, as usual, couldn't sit still for long. "Ludi, I've been thinking," Floki said, stretching out his paws. "Do you remember how Mrs. Jenkins down the street said her garden ornaments have been disappearing?" Ludi opened one eye lazily. "Yes, I remember. She was quite upset about it." Floki's eyes sparkled with excitement. "What if we solve the mystery? We could be detectives." Ludi yawned. "Detectives? Really, Floki?" "Yes, really," Floki insisted. "Think about it, we've got the skills. Sharp senses, agility, and curiosity. We could help Mrs. Jenkins and have some fun at the same time." Ludi sighed, but couldn't deny that the idea intrigued him. "All right, Floki, let's give it a try." Floki jumped up, thrilled. "Great, let's start by investigating the scene of the crime." They trotted down the street to Mrs. Jenkins' house, slipping through the fence into her garden. The place was a colorful haven filled with flowers, bird baths, and various garden ornaments, or at least it used to be. "Look, Ludi," Floki said, pointing with his paw. "There are empty spots where the ornaments used to be." Ludi nodded, inspecting the area. "We need to look for clues, anything unusual that might tell us what happened." They began to search the garden meticulously. Floki sniffed around the flower beds, while Ludi examined the ground for any signs of disturbance. After a few minutes, Floki called out, "Ludi, come here, I found something." Ludi trotted over to where Floki was crouched by a small bush. Floki pointed to a set of paw prints in the soft soil. "These aren't from a cat, they're too big." Ludi inspected the prints closely. "You're right, they look like they belong to a raccoon or a fox, but why would they be taking garden ornaments?" Floki pondered this. "Maybe they're attracted to something in particular. We need to find out what." Just then, they heard a rustling sound from behind a row of hedges. The two cats crept closer, their movements silent and stealthy. Peeking through the leaves, they saw a raccoon carefully placing a small gnome into a bag. "Aha, we've caught the thief red-handed," Floki whispered excitedly. Ludi watched the raccoon with interest. "But why is it taking the ornaments?" As they observed, the raccoon finished packing the bag and started to leave. Ludi and Floki decided to follow it, hoping to uncover its hiding place. They trailed the raccoon through the neighborhood, staying out of sight. The raccoon led them to an old shed at the edge of the park. It slipped inside, and the cats crept up to the door, peering through a crack. Inside, they saw the raccoon carefully arranging the stolen ornaments in a circle. "What is it doing?" Floki asked, puzzled. Ludi thought for a moment. "I think it's creating a display. Maybe it's attracted to the shiny objects." They watched as the raccoon added the gnome to the collection, stepping back to admire its handiwork. The shed was filled with a strange assortment of trinkets, all meticulously arranged. "We need to return these to Mrs. Jenkins," Ludi whispered. "But how?" Floki grinned. "I have an idea. Let's wait until the raccoon leaves, then we can gather the ornaments and take them back." They waited patiently until the raccoon left the shed to forage for food. Once it was gone, Ludi and Floki slipped inside and began to carefully collect the ornaments. They worked quickly, knowing the raccoon could return at any moment. With their mouths full of gnomes, bird figurines, and other trinkets, they made their way back to Mrs. Jenkins's garden. They placed the ornaments back in their original spots, hoping she wouldn't notice the brief absence. When they finished, they sat back, admiring their work. "We did it, Ludi. We solved the mystery and returned everything, Floki said proudly. Ludi nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Yes, we did, and we found out that the raccoon wasn't stealing out of malice. It just liked the shiny objects. Just then, Mrs. Jenkins appeared in the garden, her eyes widening in surprise as she saw the returned ornaments. Oh my goodness, they're back. How did this happen? She looked around, spotting Ludi and Floki sitting innocently on her patio. You two wouldn't have anything to do with this, would you? The cats purred, rubbing against her legs. Mrs. Jenkins chuckled. I guess I owe you both a thank you. You've been very helpful detectives. With a final pat on their heads, she went back inside, leaving Ludi and Floki to bask in the afternoon sun. Floki turned to Ludi, his eyes shining with excitement. Ludi, we make a great team. We should start our own detective agency. Ludi chuckled. Maybe we should, Floki, but for now, let's just enjoy the rest of the day. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ludi and Floki stretched out on the patio, feeling proud of their accomplishment. They had solved the mystery of the disappearing garden ornaments and had a grand adventure in the process. And so, the two feline detectives drifted off to sleep, dreaming of future mysteries and the promise of more adventures to come. It was a warm summer evening, and Ludi and Floki were relaxing in the garden. Ludi, the older and wiser of the two, was stretched out on the patio chair, while Floki, ever curious, was chasing a firefly. Suddenly, Floki stopped and looked around frantically. Ludi, my collar is missing, he exclaimed. Ludi opened one eye and sighed. You probably lost it while playing. Determined to find it, Floki retraced his steps. He searched the flower beds, the tall grass, and even under the garden bench. Just as he was about to give up, he spotted something shiny near the bird bath. Found it! Floki yelped in delight, picking up his collar. Ludi smiled. Good job, Floki. Now try to keep it on this time. Floki purred, pleased with himself. I will, Ludi. I will. And with that, they both settled back down, enjoying the peaceful evening once more.